This is the Triangle's Afternoon News with Rick and Donna Martinez.
Earlier today, Attorney General Josh Stein took 2 additional steps to help North Carolinians during this crazy COVID-19 pandemic that we've got. And the Attorney General joins us right now. And General Stein, before we get into the specifics of what you are doing, you know, you've been around the block. You're not exactly a spring chicken. Have you ever seen anything like this coronavirus pandemic that we're going through?
No, absolutely not. We've seen economic shocks before, whether it was the Hurricane Katrina messing up the gas distribution. We've suffered more than our fair share of hurricanes in North Carolina as well. The financial crisis in 08 and 09 obviously was devastating. But we've just had a complete shutting down of the U.S. economy that was humming along wonderfully, almost as if the light switches got turned off. And then you add a layer of health on top of it, and, you know, we're starting to lose hundreds of people a day, and it's just beyond devastating.
You know, the other thing, too, is that, you know, you've had a good time, a good amount of time in public service. I mean, my goodness, we know how to plan for hurricanes. You know, we know how to plan for natural disasters. I don't recall ever seeing a playbook on how you plan for pandemics.
Well, people in government do actually have playbooks on how to plan for pandemics. It's not something that you and I spend every day thinking about, but there are people at emergency management whose job it is to try to predict what are crises that we might face. And so things like making sure you have enough personal protective equipment and you have enough ventilators. These are things people have known in the past, and frankly, we had warning bells as early January, and it would have been helpful if we got out ahead of this a little better than we have, but we are where we are today, and the most important thing we can do is marshal all the resources we possibly can to get these products to folks working in our hospitals. I saw a wonderful quote by a doctor today saying, you know, we would never ask a firefighter to run into a burning building in a bathing suit. And that's what we're expecting folks in our hospitals that are on the front lines to do, to treat people who are sick and carry a potentially deadly virus without the proper equipment. And it's absolutely unacceptable, and we need to move mountains to get the folks on the front lines the equipment they need so that they're not putting their own health at risk in order to keep us all safe.
Okay, you did 2 things today to help everyday North Carolinians get through this. Tell us what you did.
Sure. Well, one thing I did as the lawyer for the state of North Carolina, I represent every agency and department in the state, and you know, the state does a lot of business with a lot of different people. So, for instance, people owe money to the university. People owe money to the HHS. They owe money to DOT. And we have ceased all debt collection efforts while the state of emergency is going on, simply because people do not have the income. We had unbelievable 3.3 million Americans filed unemployment this week. It is at a scale that defies anyone's experience, practically comprehension. And so we have to understand that and respect that. So we are not going to collect on the debts of the state on working people who are struggling or frankly, they want to be working. They just can't be because they lost their job. The second thing I did is I called on the Secretary of Education in Washington, Betsy DeVos, to do the same thing to student borrowers. A lot of students work jobs in order to pay their loans, and they've lost their job. And it's important that the Department of Education give the same kind of relief.
You know, the other thing that you did are, what about utilities?
Yeah. I have written a letter today to every municipality and county in the state of North Carolina that has a utility, and it could be a water utility, it could be a power utility. You know, some of the cities have their own power system, and I want to tip my hat to the North Carolina Public Utility Commission, which oversees Progress Energy, or Duke Progress, Duke Energy, all the big utilities that do business, that most people do business with. They put in an order saying no shutting off of water, no shutting off of electricity during the state of emergency, because it's critical that people, when they are at home, that they be able to have heat and air conditioning, if it depends if it gets hot, or that they have clean water. And so I asked municipalities that have similar types of utilities to do the same thing, because the Public Utility Commission doesn't have authority over the city system.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good. Well, thank you, for informing us and clearing that up. Okay. When we come back, Mr. Attorney General, of course, Wake County and a bunch of other counties, did these shelters in place orders, and so we're going to ask you a couple of questions regarding that. We're speaking with Josh Stein. He is the Attorney General of the state of North Carolina, and we're talking about the coronavirus, the COVID-19 crisis here in North Carolina.
This is the Triangle's Afternoon News with Rick and Donna Martinez.
We're talking with North Carolina Attorney General Josh Stein, who this week has taken a number of actions to try to make things just a little bit easier on North Carolinians who are struggling as we try to deal with the impacts of the coronavirus. General Stein, do you have any concerns about infringement on civil liberties during this time?
Of course. I mean, we always want to make sure that our constitutional rights are protected. But we also have to understand that we've got to conquer this virus. And that means that folks need to be listening to what the experts are saying. And when they're told to shelter in place and not go out and, go to their neighbor's house for a cookout, don't do it. There will be time enough for us to socialize after this crisis has passed.
So you believe that those mandates from local governments around the state should supersede civil liberties during this time?
Well, it's not whether they supersede them or not. This is all within the authority of government. There's no... The courts have interpreted the powers of government to deal with emergencies in ways like this. And I know that Wake County is trying to do no more than what they have to do, but they're trying to do what they think is necessary for us to stop the spread of this illness and to minimize the number of people who are going to die. The sad truth is almost certain, statistically certain, that someone in Wake County will die. And so we've got to try to do everything we can to minimize that. And, by staying home and washing our hands and staying 6 feet away from people when we're together, if that's what it takes, then that's appropriate.
Speaking of Wake County, during the week, of course, there was the announcement from the sheriff in Wake County about the suspension of applications and permits for pistols and concealed carry. Already some reporting here and there that there may be a lawsuit challenging that. What do you make of that action related to the Second Amendment?
Yeah, well, people definitely have their Second Amendment right to carry arms. I don't know what it was, the specifics of what the sheriff had ordered. I think what he was saying is that he had a very big backlog of applications that he was working on, and it didn't make sense for people to come into the office until the backlog had been worked through. But I just don't have the specifics of what his situation was.
Mr. Attorney General, with times of crisis, some among us also see this as a sign of opportunity to scam our fellow citizens. What are you guys doing over there at the Department of Justice to keep an eye out for scammers who want to take advantage of this crisis?
Yeah, it's the vast majority of people in a situation like this, the question they ask is what can I do to help? How can I help people who are feeling a little more struggle than I am? And that's what's so great about our community, what's so great about our state. But there are always going to be those few people who are simply greedy, who want to exploit people's desperation to make a dollar. And depending on how they're going about doing it, it can violate North Carolina law. We have a price gouging statute that prohibits people from exploiting a natural disaster to charge an unreasonably excessive price to take money from people when they're desperate. And that law is in effect in North Carolina right now. I have a history of very aggressively enforcing the law. After the last couple of hurricanes, I did something like 7 or 8 different lawsuits against 22 defendants, and all in, we won back nearly $750,000 for North Carolina consumers. So we're urging people, if they are concerned about price gouging, to let us know. We've gotten about 450 or more complaints so far, and we're investigating those to see if the price gouging's happened. And then, of course, there are just some flat-out scammers out there, too.
And when you say price gouging is in effect right now, I guess is memory correct that the trigger for that is the state of emergency that the governor called? So that's when the price gouging law is in effect, and once that goes away, that's when it'll be gone. Do I have that correct?
You've got it exactly right. It was 2 weeks ago when he declared the state of emergency. That's when the law came into effect. Okay.
All right. Before we go, is there anything else you'd like to tell our listeners about what they should be, concerned about during this coronavirus crisis?
Yeah, we want to do everything we can to prevent the spread of this illness, but we also want to do what we can to prevent crime. And there are scammers out there, and they're contacting folks by phone, by text, by email, social media, even door to door. People need to be so suspicious when folks reach out to them, promising a free test kit for your home, or to give you an update on the coronavirus, just click this link, or you need insurance in order to deal with the coronavirus, or I'll clean your air ducts and get rid of coronavirus, or I've got a miracle cure. There's no end to the creativity of these criminals, and now that the Congress looks like they're passing this relief bill and folks are going to get checks, the criminals are going to come to try to steal people's money, and you just have to be suspicious. Look out for your parents. Look out for your grandparents. Alert them to people of bad intention so that folks they don't get hurt on the back end just as they're on the front.
So is a good rule of thumb, if it sounds too good to be true, it's probably a scam?
That's absolutely correct. And if you have any question, we've got a toll-free number here, 877-5-NO-SCAM, 877-5-NO-SCAM. Just listeners, feel free to call my office and ask. Say, I got this call. It didn't sound totally right to me. What do you think? And just that little break may save you a lot of money.
We've been talking with North Carolina Attorney General Josh Stein. Thanks so much for your time.
Well, Rick, thank you guys. Appreciate your all your work through this crisis.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Well, sir.
Thank you.
Well, sir.
Thank you.
Well, sir.
Thank you.
Well, sir.
Thank you.